Let's start to admit people, and we'll start us off. So, good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to our latest seminar on the Your Essex Community Learning Series. My name's Lee. I'm in the Active Essex team, and I'm going to be hosting today's seminar on asset-based community development. So before I introduce my colleagues Jamie, Kelly and Jay, just a quick bit of housekeeping to share how today's going to work. So today we have a chat function available, so please do ask any questions that you may have throughout, and we will have a Q&A at the end of the presentation. The session is going to be recorded and it will be made available on the Your Essex Community YouTube channel, so you can revisit it at a later date and you can share it with your colleagues and partners. If you're attending this session live, which obviously everyone on the call today is, you'll receive a follow-up email with that YouTube link and other Your Essex community resources. And yeah, final points from me. So today's session is part of the Your Essex community offer, which is a unified offer to support the voluntary and community sector across Essex, aiming to help create conditions that enable charities, community groups and social enterprises thrive, provide access and quality support across a range of different topics, and also to empower the voluntary sector to navigate challenges independently, connect with peers and strengthen their resilience. Just to add that there are some offers as part of that wider offer. So Jamie, next slide, please. Just to say that everything starts with an online e-portal. So this is free to access. So this is the digital element of the offer. It provides information, advice and resources across a range of different topics such as governance, trustee support, safeguarding and trustees. And this e-portal is a knowledge base that's continuously being adapted and is growing, and more content is being regularly updated. So as I say, that's universal and free for all to access. So please do take a look at that if you've not so far. We have a supporting community participation element, which is working strategically to create cultures that value and empowers active and engaged communities. And today's session actually probably is quite aligned to that, I would say. So as part of that work, there's an online community of practice, which showcases really good practice and facilitates sharing and learning around how we can get communities involved in local action. And then there's some also targeted local events in some areas of the county too. And then finally, there is a place-based support element of the work, which works with local organisations to understand local needs of the sector and best ways we can support local voluntary sector organisations alongside our community partners. That offer at the moment is currently being refreshed for this year, so do take a look at that link at a later date to see what access you can see around training, events and local learning opportunities in your area. Okay, so back to today. I'm going to now invite my colleague Jamie Rhodes, who's the Operations and Development Manager for the Active Essex Foundation, to take us through today's session. So today's session is designed to help understand what ABCD or asset-based community development is, and how using strength-based approaches can support communities we work with and influence decision makers to think differently about communities. So today we're going to explore what makes a community and the strengths within it, as well as real examples which demonstrate how this work has been actioned in local areas. And we're also joined by our colleagues Jay and Kelly from Achieve, Thrive, Flourish, who will bring some of that to life in some of the work that they've been doing across South Essex too. So Jamie, over to you, and then final point to the audience, please do use that chat function and I'll monitor it throughout.
Brilliant, thank you very much, Lee. Yes, as Lee said, I'm the Operations Development Manager for Active Essex Foundation, and I lead this piece of work across Active Essex. So you may have seen me at workshops or had an email from me about this work, as I know many of you are here to support your communities. But why we do this is mainly around tackling the wider determinants of health. We know that actually 50%, if we look at the Robert Wood Johnson model, 50% of our health actually comes from where we live and can be traced back to our postcode. Now, that means that our community has a massive say in terms of what our health is and how connected we are to local places, but also people. So things like education, employment, community cohesion, family, friends, those sorts of things make up 40% of our wider health. And you can actually see that 20% of our health is actually made up by access to healthcare systems. And if we're looking at almost the financial model, obviously we know a lot of money goes into healthcare. So how can we almost shift that dial and support people in their communities before they really need to go to healthcare? Not to say that healthcare isn't important, of course it is, because there's people that do depend on medication and support. But what we can do is in this preventative model is actually look at what the benefits are of being part of a wider community. And Jay and Kelly will talk about some of the things that they do around discovery days and how they have supported community moving forwards. So what is a community? This term is often bandied around quite a lot, and it means different things to different people. And when we're talking about community, have a think about where you are in your lives or where communities you're supporting are. We know that this might change. I recently became a new dad, so I've got a community of peers who have also got children that perhaps I wouldn't have engaged with before having joined new groups. So we know that it will fluctuate, but communities can be neighborhoods, they can be your street level, they in some instances they are classed as whole cities, but we know that actually working with our communities could be quite small and needs to be really targeted and relatable to those people. So just by way of a temperature check really in your own head is how much opportunity do you feel there is to work with communities in your teams, departments, your organizations? It might be a lot depending on where you work, or some people might not necessarily have the line of sight depending on their role. So really just to have a think about it, can you work with communities, or is there more opportunity to do more following this webinar and further support that we can offer? Normally at this point during the workshop we would share a video. It's called All That We Share, and we'll share a link to it, and it's about how we often put people in boxes as well, and those communities can be intersectional. So we know that there's people who might have faith, so they're attending regularly faith-based organizations, but they also might be part of a sports club and those sorts of things. So we know that actually communities really depend on what we're actually doing at that point in time. So bit of an ask in the chat, and I'm going to ask Lee if you don't mind monitoring this. So think about a time in your life where you positively came together in your community, and this can be either work-based or personal-based, and what were some of those things that helped bring local people together? And we've got some real life examples of this. One being for my family is we supported a flood defence group who didn't exist until streets flooded, and actually it was a group of neighbours who came together and realised that actually something needed to be done, because they couldn't necessarily always rely on local services to support because they were already stretched. So a group of residents came together and bought the materials they need to prevent floods in their local area. So what might be some of those ingredients that you've got where you've come together with your community to create positive change or create an important change in your communities? Lee, have we got any responses?
You've been too quick so far, Jamie, but yeah, no, we haven't had anything come through just yet.
No problem. Just whilst you're thinking, it could be anything. We know that if we look back at the coronavirus pandemic, that a lot of communities did come together in a time of crisis to support local neighbours. Maybe it was elderly, maybe it was people who couldn't get out to the shops, and local people banded together to obviously do local shopping, might pick up prescriptions, or might have just checked in on their neighbours. Now that was a time when obviously we saw a lot of communities come together, and probably the most recent time when that's happened on such a large scale as well.
So we've had you've warmed everyone up now, Jamie. Nice one. So we've had agree. So COVID in the village to help bringing people together at a street by street level, and we've had some suggestion around key kind of ingredients around shared experience or needs or particular vision for a place.
Yeah, absolutely, and that is key. A vision for a place, it could be an idea that you've come up with your friends or your neighbours, and yeah, absolutely. If you've got a line of sight to a clear vision or a need, yeah, that's a really good example.
And then we've got another good example of how residents coming together around a particular, I guess, campaign. So someone said in the chat around trying to save a historic site. So I guess that shared ambition locally to do something positive locally. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And often you will see that. Hopefully there's some people on the call who remember Brightling Sea Lido as well. That was potentially going to be shut down, but local people came together and it's now a community owned Lido. So that was something that people didn't want to lose in their local community, and now it's a thriving hub that is owned by local people and supported by local people. So yeah, absolutely, saving local things, generating interest, it is a great example. So I'm just going to take you through some of those building blocks of what we use in asset-based community development. Now these are 6 building blocks that we've picked out, and that you'll see this used when people talk about asset-based community development. But when we're talking about friends and valued relationships being key, we're talking about trust here, and that actually, if we can build trust, that's much more valuable. And we know how hard earned and easily lost that can be. So you've got to be present, you've got to really care about what you're doing, and that's obviously fundamental to this way of working. It's recognizing that everybody has a valuable contribution to make. So it's not just those who might be the loudest in the room or those who make their point regularly. It might be those that actually, how do you get everyone to contribute in the way that they can? So we know some people might have accessibility needs. How are you capturing their voices, and why aren't they in the room if they're not there to contribute? We want to make sure that people are supported to connect and share, and this could be in any way you think is relevant. It might be sharing a skill, it might be sharing an experience that they've done, but ensuring that there's space for that to do that, and it's not just perhaps a consultation that is actually led by their ideas. We talk about reciprocity is vital for community and individual well-being, and we're not talking about transactional relationships here. We're talking about personable relationships and making sure that if you're going to say you're going to do something, absolutely follow it up, but also manage those expectations so that people know where they stand. So, and ensuring that just because you do something, it doesn't necessarily mean that they will act straight away. They might actually want to contribute in a different way, but it will help the vision. The 5th one is the assets of an area are recognised and celebrated. So how are you recognising local people and their contributions? I was chatting to a colleague once and they said that they set up an awards day for their local volunteers, and they were asking for nominations, and they only had a set number of awards available at the time. And someone going on the panel is just like, these are great people. Why don't we just celebrate them all and have an awards night? They ended up with 94 nominations, but 94 awards were given out on that day, and that went down absolutely amazingly with their community as well. So that they managed to recognise not just the winners as such, but they actually nominated and put an award for every single one of those nominations. And lastly is recognising that communities are the best place to make change happen. Yes, they might need support, but if communities are involved right at the start, and this is at the idea conception, they're much more likely to make that sustainable and meaningful change, that if your resources end or the funding ends, that they're in the best position to continue that legacy based off of that. And another example for me was in a previous role where I supported a disability nightclub that had been lost a few years ago, and local people wanted it back. So we worked with a local leisure provider and a local DJ to continue doing that. And following me leaving that role, I can see that they regularly post about new events, and it's happening monthly to have that disability nightclub session. So it meant that while we had to seed fund it, we were able to create a bit of a legacy as well. So making sure that they're brought in to support the idea, but stick with the vision as well. And how you get there might take you on different avenues, but being stubborn in the vision, which we'll talk about later, is really key. So when it comes to building community, you might have heard this before. We need to focus on what's strong rather than what's wrong. Often you might see deficits that exist in communities. It might say a data set might tell us that there's high unemployment, that actually there's high obesity, or whatever it may be. And the idea normally is that an organisation would swoop in and save the day. They might parachute someone in who's there for a set period of time. And it defines people by the problem that they face. And it assumes that people are passive recipients, and that actually there's an institutional solution for every problem. And as a result, we've created a view where individuals think that institutions have all of the best solutions, when in reality, perhaps they may not. When we focus on what's strong, the best solutions are found with those communities. We're recognizing people by their gifts, powers, passions, capabilities. And we're recognizing that individuals are actually contributors to their communities, and that institutions are there to supplement or complement what the communities are doing. And it creates a real sense of belonging, feeling heard and feeling valuable. So actually we're flipping the dial to go, okay, yes, the data is telling us we need to be here, but what is the community saying is the solution to this, rather than coming up with a solution and then consulting communities about it. So when we talk about assets, normally in workshops, we ask this question, and when we ask what assets are, people often think about the physical spaces. And hopefully just in this short time I've been talking, you'll recognise that there's individuals that absolutely are assets. So it might be young people, sports coaches, system leaders, doctors. Groups are real assets, and these can be both formal and informal that you will see. So it might be your sports clubs, but it might just be a group of people doing something good in your local community, whether that's clearing, doing a litter pick. I know where I live, I see a couple of people litter picking every Saturday off of their own backs, and they're a real asset because they're creating pride in the place. But we do also need to recognise that places and spaces play a big part in that, and so do the organisations, and working together, these can form fantastic community assets. And the last one, often people are quite surprised at, is what are those stories people are sharing? So the personal stories, the group stories, the successes, the challenges. And this is where the real nuggets of information come from, because people are willing to share. You just need to ask them. So how do we draw out those personal stories and the successes, and not hiding from the challenges that are experienced from that? And we can do a whole piece on asset mapping and what that might look like in local areas. So how do we support communities? Often we do two. Now, this is when an institution will set up a program of some sort because they've seen that there's a need in a local area. There'll be little consultation, and they will hope that people will turn up, or they've parachuted someone in for that. Doing four is the former charity model. So the traditional charity model used to be that local charity realizes there's a need and they will set up something again with someone in post. But we know that charities are working very differently now, but it's often as a way of doing something good for other people. But you might have some people who are classed as experts who might be in that. But we know obviously charities now, and a lot of you on this call will be working with people who have lived experience to really share and shape. So you're probably actually in the doing with space, where actually you're working with local people, those who perhaps have that lived experience, and you're supporting a program. But what you're actually doing is facilitating it while they might need a little bit of support, and you might be able to step away at some point, leaving a legacy for that program. The last one is the buy space. Buy is often a group of local people. I know when I drive around locally, you might see local parents taking the ball to park, and they've got a group of children playing football, which grows into a summer league, and that might just be an organic thing. And there are groups that do that. We've got some examples, such as some of you may have heard of the Wickford Wombles, who actually commit to litter picking regularly. They have an annual event, and that is a group of local residents who have been going for a few years now and continue to be run and led by local people. So a bit of the question in your head is, where do you currently sit? Where might you want to be? And we appreciate that this might be a bit of a flowing journey, because there will be some things when I've worked with other organizations that absolutely you need to do too, because you need to do it, make it safe. You need to make sure people are following the guidelines or following the law, but actually what are the elements within your work that could be doing with what are the practical elements, and what might be some of the things that if we got out of the way as organizations that local people could run, because often there might be some things that they have a fantastic idea, but by contacting us or getting involved, they might actually be hindered because there's a lot of steps that they would need to do before they can even get to on the ground and starting with their idea. And just for reference, we normally start our workshops with this is when I talk about A, B, C, D, people think I'm reciting the alphabet, but actually what I'm talking about is asset-based community development, and then you also get some blank faces. So we use these quite interchangeably depending on who we're talking to, but what is at the heart of this is citizen-led approaches, strengthening communities, community development, community building. It's all about supporting local communities at where they're at and what they want to do. So reframing our questions to community. So you'll see some questions on screen, and what these are come from a place of strength rather than asking what's wrong in your local community, what do you need. We're actually looking to discover what is working well, what do we value, what are we proud of here, what do local people need, and is there anything getting in the way? So it really flips that script for local people. And this is taken from, and I'm going to bring Jay and Kelly into this conversation shortly, around discovery days and how you can really work with local communities and generate some really good ideas, but also manage the expectations of those in the room. So Jay, do you want to give a bit of an overview of what a discovery day is and how they might run?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, thank you, Jamie. Yeah, so I'm Jay. I work for ATF, G5 Flourish, and just a bit of an overview, really, of what a discovery day is, before I bring Kelly in to talk about what that's like in practice. So Discovery Days, essentially you're inviting local community members, statutory partners, whether that be education, health, councils, all into a room where you ask those strength-based questions, or not into a room, as Kelly's going to go on to talk in one moment. And you're asking about what's going really well in that area and how we can develop those things, and what do you need as a community for that to happen. And you're asking those people in the room that exact question. So the onus isn't on the facilitator, it's on the people within the room to be able to come up with their own solutions, with the help and aid with the statutory partners and us as ATF as well. So what Kelly's going to do is she's just going to talk to you about how those discovery days can really differ from different areas. So no one way is going to fit all. So Kelly, if you'd like to just talk about a couple of discovery days that you've experienced.
Yeah, hi, I'm Kelly. I'm from ATF. I've been involved with the Discovery Days for about 5 years now, and originally I attended one, and that was based in a school where they invited local people in, people that attended the school, the families, the teachers, the LSAs, everybody within that small community. And as Jay said, it went about what's going strong in your community. And people got to write that down and to voice how they felt about that community, which is really nice because we tend to miss all of those bits. So it was giving people the opportunity to talk about their strengths and what they love about their areas. Looking at that and looking at well it worked, we decided that we were going to give it a go in a GP surgery. So that changed slightly because we went into the waiting area of GP surgery where there were already people, so they didn't actually need so much of an invite. It was there already, and we asked those questions on the ground in the surgery. I sat with patients in the waiting room and just asked the same questions, and we got the same response. It had to be different, but it was talking about their health and what's strong in their community to help them through their health. And with that I was able to take their responses back to the PCN, to the GPs, in the surgery and to say, look, this is what they're saying, this is how it would work for them, you know. So early interventions with their health. So that led into developing walk and talks, one-to-one armchair boxing and things like that, because it was early intervention. And eventually that's where BERT come from, which is Basildon Early Response Team. So that's looking at before we get to that point where we need a GP, or before we get to the point of having to go into hospital. And again, that all come from the community. It wasn't us. It was the community saying this is what's good about our area and these are the things that we could do to make us thrive. We then went into Thurrock. I don't know if anybody knows Koala Park. I'm a Thurrock girl. I live in Thurrock. That's a huge community in there, and there's not really any space to invite everybody in. So we decided to do an outdoor session. So we held an event and put on a few little things for people to do, but was able to ask those questions again by interacting, by giving out surveys. And we got lots of responses that way because people were enjoying themselves. They were able to talk about all the beautiful things in their area. It's surprising that if you can start by focusing on what's strong, that the community tell you what's strong. If you go in with what's wrong, you'll end up talking about bins and lights and rubbish and stuff like that. Whereas if you go in with what's strong, they talk about their community connections. They talk about their green spaces. They talk about the people that make a difference in their community. And then you can link with those people, you know, and then bring what the community wants. So, you know, it works in every aspect as long as you're going in with the right attitude and the right questions. I think I've covered that.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you, Kelly. So I just want to bring in a couple of questions for you then, because we've talked about discovery days and what they look like, and both Jay and Kelly, this is open to you. What are some of those steps before a discovery day? How do you generate interest? And I know you've already talked about the GP surgery where people were there, but for something like Koala Park or your school-based ones, how are you generating that interest?
Yeah, I can jump in for the school-based discovery days there, Jamie. So it works really well at school just because there's a ready-made community there, especially access to kind of 400, maybe even more families at the school that you attend. So getting the school on side is the first initial point that we need to do. And it's selling that to them as well. So selling the benefits that's going to happen for the school as well, you know. So whether that be increased attendance at school if they're attending these sessions, etc., whether it's sports-based sessions that we're developing at the Discovery Days, but then also it's talking to the community as well. So the community are key, and and finding that asset within the community as well. So talking to people that know people. So at ATF, we call it sticky people. So people that bring along sort of 40, 50 people along with them, you know, to any kind of event. Once you've got that, you've got people talking. Then it's about kind of keeping that momentum, talking to councils, talking to health, talking to education, making sure that they're all on the understanding of what Discovery Day is around. But that process doesn't happen overnight, right? So, you know, that's a process that probably takes about 5, 6, maybe even to 8 weeks for that to get to that point. And then we can start talking about a date where we can get everyone together in the same room. So that's kind of education, and that's how we've worked that. And I know that Kelly will kind of talk passionately about Tilbury and how that Discovery Day formed.
So for an open space like Tilbury, it was about taking time out to walk in the area, talk to people in the area. I mean, that was a good couple of weeks of walking around, seeing groups of people, introducing ourselves, talking about, you know, what's going on for them. I mean, at one point I was sitting on a step outside somebody's house talking to a whole group of people that were already out there having a cup of coffee and watching their children play. And then we linked with Find Your Active Thurrock, who then put us in touch with all the other organisations. I went into doctors' surgeries and local schools to explain that we're trying to get a discovery day together, started to invite people along like that. did a lot of leaflet dropping to say that we're having this and what it was about, and things like that. So it is slightly harder to hold an outdoor session like that. But as long as you put in the work beforehand, it works just the same. In fact, that day, that one, we had nearly 200 people come through. So we got a lot more feedback and a lot more input of what's going on, because we were catching people that were just coming through as well, and them asking, oh, what's going on? So we got a bigger audience by doing it outside, but it did need the work to be put in first. It wasn't as easy as sending out invites, but it was about getting to know the community first. I'm really lucky. I'm very passionate about Thurrock. I'm very passionate about Tilbury. I know the area well. So again, I suppose, Jane mentioned it earlier, it's about finding an asset. So I would have been the asset because I know the area well, and I knew the assets in the community, and I knew the mums and the dads to talk to that would, oh, yeah, no, absolutely, Kelly, and bring 10 people with them. So it is about finding the sticky people, but it seems to work wherever you go, as long as you put in the work first.
Kelly, I was just going to say as well, around like the initial event, and I know that you have, but I want to hear it from you, but around the event, have you noticed that people step forward and wanting to volunteer their time freely as well?
Yeah, so some of the local ladies, a mum and daughter team, in fact, they do catering for somewhere else, for a local cafe. They could see that the children were enjoying themselves, and then that went on to them doing bits for us. So bringing fruit and platters and sandwiches. They wanted to volunteer. Teenagers, not in Thurrock now, there's 10 young lads that volunteer every week. But because we were asking the right questions, it helps. In a community like that I am from there, but these people wanted to put themselves forward and volunteer for things as well. And actually, most sessions that we run in Tilbury now off of that Discovery Day, I'm there. Yes, I'm there. I'm there for the safety aspect. I'm there for the risk assessments and stuff. But now we've got to the point where the community lead all them sessions themselves, and with the right input and the right support, they could then, I don't have to be there. They could do it themselves. So that's what it's about. It's about giving them the tools as well to, strengthen their strengths so they can move on to do it themselves. But people love to volunteer when it's about them, and as it should be about them. It is not about me or anybody else, really. It's about the community themselves.
Absolutely, and I think your point there, Kelly, around that you're there from the safety, the governance point of view, but actually it's the community leading. I think that's really key, and we'll come on to some of the learnings that we've shared, because I think Kelly and Jay have already touched on them. But I did have another question. Now, at these discovery days, Jay, Kelly, I imagine you get a lot of ideas, and how do you turn these into action, but also manage the expectations? So if something isn't possible, how do you ensure that those voices are still recognised, but you're able to manage those expectations that it might not be possible, it might not be possible right now?
Yeah, so at the beginning of Discovery Day, we will kind of outline those expectations. So, we're open, but openly saying, this is about what we're continuing to grow, what's already strong within the community, and you guys in the room are going to be able to help navigate that. But are we going to be able to change the world today or within the next few weeks? No, of course we're not. But being able to capture what your needs are within the community to build upon what we've already established, then this is our starting point today. But a lot of the time, a lot of their wants and needs can be established within the Discovery Day. So, for example, there was a Northlands Discovery Day that I held in Basildon not so long ago, and there was a guy that was in the room. He suffered with his mental health. He wanted to get back into gardening, exercise, and kind of and cycling as well. So within the room, we had Essex Pedal Power, we had Trust Links, and we had ATF. So from that one conversation, he was supported, and that's a case study within itself. But then it's about kind of us being able to openly to tell people, communicate with people that with everything that we capture from today, we can then feed back to councils and statutory partners to be able to help navigate this with you. So it's not, and it's also putting the onus on them as a little bit as well. So, like, what are you going to do about this? Like, in a kind of kind way, not just saying you need to do this by yourself, but we're here to support you.
Yeah, brilliant. I think that's really key. And what about now we've talked about obviously the successes of a Discovery Day and what they look like. What barriers have you faced with some of these? Have you ever gone into an area where it's perhaps not worked as well as you'd hoped, or that perhaps the community's not been as receptive initially and you've had to work to overcome those? And what did you have to do?
Yeah. So in terms of barriers, again, if you're kind of communicating this from the beginning, the barriers shouldn't be there. But you have some real strong people within the community that got political views. So it's about kind of being able to say to the audience, the members in front of you, that this is what today's about. If they bring up a political comment or something that we can't change there and then, hear them say that I hear what you're saying, but actually we'll pick up a kind of a conversation in the future around this. I'll take details afterwards, just because we have something called a park it board as well at Discovery Days. So it's around if there's anything we can't resolve or it gets a little bit kind of heated, that we kind of park it, we kind of put their details on there and we'll communicate with them afterwards. I'm not sure if you've got any other examples there, Kel.
And yeah, I'm going to say, if you come across somebody like me, on the initial Discovery Day that I attended, I didn't work for ATF. I worked within the school and I lived in the community. And I think I was a barrier because I was so used to people jumping into my area, telling me what I need, giving it to me for a few weeks, and then off they jump. And actually, I didn't really want it in the first place because nobody was listening. I think so. You're going to come across people like me, people that try to make it really hard for you. And I did. I made it hard. I jumped in with questions, pointed out that I didn't need fixing. But I think if you can show people that again and again and again that it's not about you, it's about them, and it's what about they need rather than the other way around. That's really important. You're always going to come across people like me, and it's about proving that and showing that you're working for me rather than trying to fix me. I think in areas like Tilbury again, that they were so used to being forgot about, they felt unimportant, and I was just another person that was coming in again saying that I'm going to help, I'm going to support. I suppose it's about being consistent and about showing up all the time and and we revisit our Discovery Days as well, so that we can inform people of progress and show them that, oh, this is what you said originally, these are the things that's happening, any more new ideas. So it's really important to revisit that as well.
Yeah, and I think as well, just to kind of go on from that point, that's around barriers. Now, one of the other barriers as well is like, we can't have everyone in the room, just because people might not be able to attend that event, or we might not know of a charity or an organisation or community member that should be in that room. And we learned from early doors that actually we need to make sure that we talk to people in the room about other people that are missing from the room as well, just because we want to make sure that everyone's heard within the community, because otherwise that can cause frictions as well.
Yeah, 100%. And I think Kelly and Jay, you segued quite nicely into the next slide. So Kelly and Jay will hang around at the end of today just for the Q&A section as well. So if you have any questions for Kelly and Jay and ATF's process on a Discovery Day, absolutely feel free to pop those in the chat and Lee will pick those up. So we are coming towards the end of the webinar, but what we really want to share is what have we learned of doing this way of working, and this is taken from when we were working on the local delivery pilot through Sport England, and that the first one we've talked about a lot, that progress is always much quicker when there's trust in relationships. It can't be skipped, and I think, Kelly, you touched on it earlier. You've got to be present. It takes time. It's not going to be a quick fix, but actually the solutions will be long lasting. Need to be stubborn on the vision and flexible on the detail. I think someone put in the chat earlier when we were talking about the key ingredients that a shared vision is really key, but how you might get there will take you through so many different avenues. But if everyone is aligned to that same sort of vision, then absolutely you will get there. You need to hold your nerve. So something we learn is that you need to stay firm in that commitment to the common purpose and the ways of working, which is essential. We need to also bridge that empathy gap. So we've talked about lived experience, and some of you on the call will have lived experience in various things, but actually you need to make sure that there is no empathy gap and that we are including everyone absolutely in the community, whoever we're working with at that point. We use a phrase in ActiveSX called it saying yes to mess. This way of working is messy, as I say. It's not linear. It will take you off in so many different directions. Be ready for challenges and those changes, because it might mean that actually you're heading towards the right direction, just it's taking you a few attempts to get there, and you can learn from those. We talk about going where the energy is. So we say not necessarily wasting time with people or organizations who are not enthusiastic. They might be on the fence. They might absolutely be wanting to hear more. They're important to have in the room. But if you've got those sticky people who are bringing 10 other people with them, and then they're bringing 10 other people with them, that's where the real movement is going to be. So absolutely going where the energy is really important. And the next two are probably two of my favorite, is that we actually can't solve the problem with the same mindset that created it. This is that institutional kind of institutions have the best solution, when actually we've heard from Kelly and Jay about some of the ideas that come in that, yes, absolutely, communities can do that. And often communities will have a different mindset to how the problem was created in the first place. And the last one I think is really important. I've done this personally in previous roles, but recognizing that it doesn't have to be perfect to be better. So we don't have to create the perfect plans or the perfect delivery. We need to be realistic and celebrate those small steps. And it might be celebrating that you've managed to hold a discovery day, you're going and taking an action in the next week, or whatever it may be. But yeah, we often chase perfections when actually being better is a fantastic step, especially for the communities we're working with. So that's the end of sort of my section on this. But if you want to learn more, we have an Essex-wide ABCD network, and we do link in with Jay, who will be able to share more about the community practice piece that Lee also touched on, and community participation. You can book a workshop with us, which we do full and half day, or we can do different timeframes. If you want to have an introduction like this call, absolutely do. And you can also email me directly, so feel free to contact me at jamie.rhodes@activeessex.org, and please do visit the website, so you can use the link in this slide deck to visit our website to see what else we can offer. And if we don't necessarily have the answer, we will reach out to local organisations we work with, because we've got a network of 12 people who support co-facilitating of this work, and we link in with organisations right throughout Essex. So please do get in touch if you're interested. Over to you, Lee.
Jamie, Kelly, Jay, a massive thank you. I appreciate that's a whistle-stop tour of probably a larger workshop, but I think you covered some excellent topics, and for a bite-sized lunchtime learning session, you covered all bases and did a stellar job, so thank you very much. For the audience here, I've just put in the chat that we do have, or if you could scan that QR code, it's a very short participant survey. We would really appreciate just 3 or 4 minutes of your time to be able to provide some feedback from today's session, and also potentially future topics around what we could also include in future online learning series. I will offer this opportunity, as we have got kind of 15 minutes available still in our kind of allotted slot to ask any questions. So while you do have Jamie and Kelly and Jay and the sticky people, I guess, on the call, please do put in the chat any questions that you might have while you do have kind of access to the assets, I guess. So we did have one question that came in. So Kelly J, there was a question around how do you get or incentivize people to come along to them discovery days or to engage in the first place? So if you had particular, do you have an incentive scheme or lunch or vouchers or food? I guess it goes back to that first conversation that Jamie posed around think about a time where everyone come together and what were the key ingredients for that. So I guess what's the key ingredients to get people to engage in then discovery days and kind of the community engagement bits that you do?
I think that one, you mentioned food. Food is very important, especially in the climate we're in. To put on an activity to have a look in the area, to talk to a few people first about what the things that they like. So if they like tennis, maybe put in a tennis session afterwards, or, you know, free teas and coffees are good. You know, we've done one at a wellness cafe where a lot of it is the older generation and they like board games and things like that. So make sure things like that are available. So do your homework first and you'll engage the people because you're putting on the things that they want. And that again shows that you're about them. But if somebody says tennis, so I run a tennis session with the discovery day, it shows that I've already listened. It showed that I've took on board what they want, not what I can give. So it's about doing a bit of homework, but things like that, you know, food and activities, we always put them on as well.
Yeah, definitely. And I think as well, just around the discovery days are inclusive of everyone. So like it doesn't matter what age you are. So we have children attend the discovery days, and that's worth mentioning around some of the questions that are the strength-based questions that are posed in the discovery day. That there's images, there's crayons, there's felt tips, there's sequins, there's everything, you know, to so then the children feel engaged as well to put their input into that, as well as maybe a few sweets on the table, which always goes down a treat.
Awesome, excellent. I will give a couple more minutes in the chat just for any further questions, but just while we have you, so Kelly, you touched on this earlier about how you was a participant at one of these discovery days, and Jay, I know you've been kind of a participant, or you used to work in, I think it was Northlands Park Primary School before kind of working with ATF. I guess, like, how have you gone from like the being engaged by a discovery day to then being involved in the programming of the organization that creates the conditions like that? Like how was you like invited to play a part in that? So Kelly attends the Briscoe's Discovery Day. How did you get to like where you are now kind of going across the county, sharing the amazing work that you've done across South Essex?
So that Discovery Day was held in Briscoe Primary School, and I'd worked in Briscoe for 22 years. And I was, you know, it was all about the work that I did. I was a DSL, I was attendant, I was the pastoral lead, and I had every day 10, 15 parents lining up that needed support, that needed things in their area, and you can only do so much. If Stuart Long was here, he'll tell you I was the hardest person to communicate with. I ignored him for about 3 months of him inviting me to come and join this and come and join that, because I wanted to see it for myself. If you were going to do this for my community and my children in places that I was passionate about, so eventually I could see that it was worth doing. So I dropped an email and I went along to a couple of sessions, and before you know it, I've joined the team and I'm using that to take that elsewhere, because one, I can use what they've given, what the original discovery was, but I can take my own lived experiences of it with me. So, you know, I know that there are people out there that need to have questions asked because I was her. So I've now used all of that, including my lived experiences, and now I'm doing it in other areas as well. So I was quite lucky.
Fabulous. And we've had another question kind of slightly similar, or the next step, I guess. So how do so Jay, once the discovery days happen, what's the continuous engagement beyond that?
So, as Kel mentioned earlier on, it's around kind of liaising with them and communicating with the people that attended the Discovery Day. So, making sure that you've got communications with them, whether that's WhatsApp group or whether it's an email address, and just kind of keeping them in the loop around what's going on. And I think it's important that that's kind of addressed in the session itself. So the way we've done it before is that we've been able to go into that area with maybe a small portion of funding to be able to get something going. And it's like the Northlands Park story, right? It's the Briscoe, from the back of the Briscoe Discovery Day. We knew the engagement was there. We knew that there was sticky people there as well, and we invited them down to the session down Northlands Park that was once called Murder Park. And then we had over 200 people attend that session. So straight away from that as well, it's that continuous kind of movement as well, that keeping that momentum going. And straight away from that point, did we expect 200 people to attend? Of course we didn't. But what happened there, and what was really nice to see, I wasn't there, so I can't say it firsthand, but I know from Kelly's story and Stu Long's story, it's around kind of straight away you saw those people step forward, want to give their time, want to give their energy, saying this is what else they could offer. So straight away you're sparking more interest within the follow-up.
Thanks, Jay. So Kelly, I just wondered if you could touch on that as well, because it feels like the key to that is just being reliable, or because you were touching on it, so you didn't trust anyone when they first come in because people kept parachuting into your community. So like there's a piece around being reliable or being consistent, and also having like a real low bar for participation for people as well, it feels like as well. So like really making that really easy for people to play a part in something. Is that right?
Yeah, that definitely. Like you just said, I was totally not sold. I wasn't sold. But because if they kept showing up, because they said they were going to do it, they turned up, regardless of the weather, regardless of what it was that was asked. If they could do it, they showed consistency and they showed they're turning up. Jay mentioned Northlands Park, known as Murder Park. My children went there when they were small. By the time they were teenagers, I'd banned them from going. It was unsafe. I didn't want my children anywhere near it. But we do a session on the back of the Discovery Day, and like Jay said, when I turned up and there was 200 people, remembering that I'm still not ATF, I'm just a community member. I'm going to come along and see what they've got. And they were showing me that they were doing what was asked at the community session at the Discovery Day. So now, and then they showed consistency again, and hang on, this is working. Now that park, my grandchildren play in that park. Does it have its ups and downs? Yeah, but with the support from the Discovery Day, listening to what was needed, they took the park back. The park now belongs to the community again, which was really nice. So you're right, it's about being consistent, showing people that what you're saying is what you're doing.
Brilliant. Thank you very much, Kelly. And then a couple of points in the chat saying thank you very much, really useful, very interesting and amazing, well done as well. So an excellent summary, I think, to finish. So unless there's any other questions that come in the next kind of 30 seconds or so, just to say that a massive thank you for everyone for spending your 12 o'clock with us this afternoon. We've recorded the session, so it'll go online on the YouTube channel. We'll send out the link to everyone. To say we've got one final session currently available as part of the online learning series. That's around understanding your legal structures and also a deeper dive into the ePortal resource. So please do book on to that. And then just the final massive thank you to Jamie, Kelly and Jay for your time this afternoon. Super work. Thank you very much.
Thank you.